Well, Knicks fans, I can't say I'm surprised by the outcome of today's Game 6, and I can't say I'm panicking, but I am concerned. So, you have every right to be concerned after what you just saw, but at the end of the day, the Knicks still have Game 7 at home. So, I think the two key questions that will determine whether the New York Knicks advance or go home after Sunday afternoon's 3:30 start is how's Josh Hart feeling? And how is OG Anunoby feeling? Those two questions, I think, hold the biggest key to whether the Knicks hold serve at Madison Square Garden and eliminate the Indiana Pacers in 2 days. How did Game 6 go? There's a couple of rough details I can get into, but it's not really that important. Game 6, I feel like, played out very much like Games 4 and 5. Um, the series has seemed to have entered a pattern, and if it continues in this pattern, the Knicks should win Game 7 comfortably. But it's Game 7, and there's no way to predict how the two teams are going to respond in that pressure cooker. So, what happened in Game 6? Um, a case could be made that the Knicks got run off the floor tonight. Um, I don't think it was exactly the same thing as what happened in Game 4. What I saw was that in the first quarter, the Knicks played fairly well and had a 5-point lead early on. They were hanging with the Pacers. The Pacers had not really dealt that haymaker blow just yet. So they led most of the first, and in the second quarter was when they really started to struggle. And it seemed like the point where they started to struggle was Jalen Brunson. And Brunson has really struggled in games 3 and 4 in Indiana, and you thought maybe it's because of the foot problem he had after game 2. He was really hurt in game 2 and had to make a um, inspiring comeback onto the floor in the second half of game 2. So that was key. But you thought, well, maybe that was part of the reason why he was so bad in games 3 and 4. But then he was tremendous and put up some 40 points in game 5. And so now I don't really know what it is that made him so bad in game 6. He did still score 31 points, but that does not tell the story because by halftime he was 2 of 13, and most of the possessions where the Knicks fell way behind in the second quarter were possessions where Brunson was trying to get his shot going. And they had his usual isolation plays where he'd dance and back around and move and try and outmaneuver his opponent and get the shot he wanted. And those shots just weren't going in. Most of the time they were falling short. He was getting to the line, he was missing free throws. And it seems like when Brunson is not making his shots, he's also not missing his free throws. And it's frustrating to watch because he has a good free throw shooting percentage during the regular season, but it feels like it's really fallen off during the playoffs. Brunson in this series has been a completely different player at home versus on the road, and you just have to hope that the home team, Jalen Brunson, returns for Game 7. Um, and then Josh Hart is a very big concern of mine. Hart has been reliably giving the Knicks 48 minutes every single game, and it's Hart and it's hustle. It's driving to the basket. It's getting easy layups, but it's also hitting open threes. It's getting the rebounds, the offensive rebounds, the tough, gritty rebounds that you got to run and dive for and battle and rip it away from an opponent. Those are the rebounds that Josh Hart has been getting for the Knicks. He's been doing all those things. He is an essential glue guy. And if this abdominal strain that's been affecting him in game 6, that took him out of game 6, where he asked out of the game, if he is really that compromised, and game 6, it's not even 48 hours away. It's an afternoon game in game 6. I'm sorry. Game 7 is an afternoon game as opposed to game 6. So he has very short turnaround time to recover. They also got to get on a flight, get back to New York. And if Hart is not able to bring the energy that he normally brings, then the Knicks are in a world of trouble. Add to that, if OG Anunoby is not able to return, I mean, the philosophy for Tom Thibodeau is next man up. I don't know what next man up is left at this point. They already dug Alec Burks off the bench, and Burke has been hitting his shots and has been tremendous. But if you have to get somebody else off the bench, he's not going to be able to do for you anything close to what Josh Hart has been able to do. Um, I'm not really expecting Anunoby to be able to play, but I'm expecting Hart to be able to suck it up and give you a serious effort one more time, one more game, because he's that intense of a competitor. Um, and if his body does not allow him to do that as much as he tries to, because he lives up to his namesake. I think he's going to do everything in his power to be able to give you that maximum effort. But if he can't, the Knicks could be in trouble. And then it's going to come down to, well, when whoever has been at home has been able to get the lucky breaks, they've been able to make effort plays, they've just been able to get their mojo going, get in their game plan. And I've seen this happen in NBA playoff series for some 30 years. It doesn't happen in every series, but I've seen the Knicks, especially the 90s Knicks, and a ton of these where home court is everything. And the battle to break through and win on the road is so difficult. But sometimes in a game 7, that advantage starts to fade because the two teams both equally want it so bad and don't want their season to end, and all bets are off. And I've seen it happen against this Pacers team some 29 years ago in 1995 when it was Ewing's Knicks and Reggie Miller's Pacers. And I could have sworn that that Knicks team was not going to lose that game at the Garden on that day. And Patrick Ewing missed a finger roll, and they did. So, lesson learned. Anything can happen in a game 7, even if it's in your building, even if you have the best fans, the best home arena, the best home court advantage in the world. Anything can happen. The Pacers can finally raise their game to the moment. Now, the way this series has gone, I find is very interesting. It's very simple when you lay it out that, well, the home team has won all 6 games, and it should stand that a home team wins game 7 and the Knicks move on. But um, a little extra layer of nuance here. Games 1, 2, and 3 have all been very close games that have come down to the last few minutes. Games 4, 5, and 6 have all been lopsided blowouts completely controlled by the home team where they look like themselves and the visitors do not, and they're not doing anything right, and they look like the wheels have fallen off. And if that pattern holds one more time, then the Knicks should be able to revert to their game 5 form and send the Pacers home. But that's the thing about sports. We don't know that. So, if the Knicks lose this series and game 7 is not a game that they should have won, then they're going to look at game 3 as the game that got away. In game 3, they were down by 3 in the final minute, and Jalen Brunson hit a 3 to tie it with about 40 seconds to go. And Indiana had a possession, and if the Knicks stopped them, they would have the final possession with the score tied and a chance to win the game. The Knicks played incredible defense on that possession, and the Pacers had to throw it in the corner, well, I guess the wing, to Andrew Nembhard, who was not a known three-point shooter, and Nembhard had to chuck it up as the shot clock was winding down. He wasn't right up to the line. He was a few feet back. It wasn't a super long 3, but it looked like it was out of his comfortable range. And he drained it. And the crowd went crazy. It felt like it took something out of the Knicks, and there's about 12 seconds left. So down 3, the Knicks still had its shot. Jalen Brunson tried to force up a 3 with defenders on him, and he was trying to force it up in such a way to get to draw a 3 free throws foul. And they didn't call it. I think they saw through it, and I think it was a right no call. And that was pretty much the end of it. The Pacers would get the ball, and the Knicks didn't have another shot. If Nembhard does not make his three-pointer, the Knicks probably get the ball for the final 12 seconds, and I think they find a way to score and win that game and go up 3-0. And if that was the case, then we wouldn't be here. They probably have won it in five. Um, if the Pacers lose this series and game seven is not within their reach, they will probably look back at game one as their game that got away. And in game one, they had a right to be very upset with the referee's calls at the end of the game. Um, there was a play where Brunson appeared to turn the ball over, have a defender knock the ball away. The referees called a kickball. And the replay showed it was not a kickball, and the Pacers should have had that possession. Instead, the Knicks kept the ball, and the Knicks scored. A possession later, or maybe two possessions later, the Pacers have the ball in what's clearly going to be the last possession of the game, and the Knicks are leading by just 1 point. And there is a pick set on Dante DiVincenzo. Um, I can't think for the life of me right now who the player is that set the pick. It was one of the Pacers' bigs. I don't recall if it was Miles. I think it was Miles Turner. Um, Turner, I believe, sets the pick on DiVincenzo, and it's a hard pick, but I didn't think it was an offensive foul and an illegal screen. And DiVincenzo embellishes it a little bit and gets a call and forces a turnover on the Pacers, where I was relieved as a Knicks fan because I was terrified the Pacers were going to score. But if I am an objective basketball fan, I want to see what the Pacers do on that possession and how that plays out. So I think basketball fans might have been robbed of a moment there, but I'm just so grateful that that went the Knicks' way so that we have a game seven. Um, but I totally understood Pacer fans feeling like calls went against their way in that game. Um, I know by the time game three was over, there were Knicks fans that felt they were calls that went against their way. There was a goaltending call that was a little questionable down the stretch in that game three that probably should have gone for the Knicks, but I don't know if they win that game based on that call. But that call in game one, those two calls in the final moments of game one were so pivotal that I think Pacer fans have a legit gripe there. So, with that being said, this is where I think the Knicks stand now. I think they should win game seven, and if they don't, it'll be a disappointment, even though, I mean, obviously, losing a game seven is always a disappointment. As far as the way their season ends, the way what they accomplished throughout the season, I think you have to expect, not just hope, but expect the Knicks to win game seven, even with all the injuries. They showed all the guys hurt, and you can field a solid starting five with the guys the Knicks have hurt now, especially if you have to add Josh Hart to it. I don't really know what to expect out of them if Hart can't play or if he's really severely compromised. If he's able to play, I think they should win game seven. And I expected them to probably lose this game because I expected Indiana to bounce back and them to ride the home court wave. And as long as you come back and win game seven at home, as you have been doing, then everything's okay. You do kind of deny yourself a little bit of rest. And that's why the Nimhard 3 at the end of game three really burned me, because the Knicks, had they gone up 3-0, they would have had some real chances to rest a very ailing, hurting roster, especially the Brunson foot. I don't know where Brunson is with his foot, but he's played enough minutes over the last two games that I think if it was really bad, you wouldn't see as much of him out there. So, the expectations I have with the Knicks are they win game seven on Sunday afternoon and they play the Boston Celtics. In that series, I do not expect them to beat the 63 win Celtics, but I expect them to win at least two games. If they win two games and lose that series 4-2, I think that would be an honorable exit from the playoffs, and the Knicks would have accomplished what they set out to do in 2024. And I think at that point, if you say, well, they were banged up, they had injuries, that was the most that squad could have done, I would agree with you. I can totally kind of accept that. Now, That's the bar I have for them. That's the expectations. I hope they can exceed it. My hope is that Boston has a lot of talent, but maybe they're a little lacking in the heart department this year. Maybe the Knicks could take advantage of that. I noticed the Celtics, whether they were playing Miami in the first round or Cleveland in the second round, they got a little soft on their home floor and they lost game 2 at home in both of those series. But then they go on the road to their opponent's building and lay a beat down on their opponent in game 3 and game 4 in their opponent's home arena. So it felt like in both scenarios, losing game 2 at home woke them up and allowed them to reassert their advantage. Now, the Cavaliers are a similar case to the Knicks. They were really banged up, and by the end of that series, they had lost a lot of their guys, including Donovan Mitchell. Um, they lost Levert. They lost a couple. Yeah, they lost a number of guys that were key to that offense, and I don't know how you're really supposed to compete with the Celtics when that happens. The Knicks have still been able to stitch it together with the limited roster that they have. Um, then there's the factor of if they play Boston, we think OG Anunoby should be able to play. I don't know if he'll be ready for game 1 or game 2, but he should be back at some point in the series. And that really tips the scales back in favor, maybe not in favor of the Knicks, but in favor of an even series. So then there's also Porzingis on the Celtics against this former team. Now the Knicks have been hurt in this series by Obi Toppin, who seems to have a grudge against the Knicks and want to prove how good of a player he was that you traded him away. And he's hurt the Knicks at times. He's been a pretty solid guy for Indiana. He's dunked on them a few times. He's hit some outside shots. He's a guy I worry about a little bit. So, Porzingis could show up and cause some real problems for the Knicks. He's a walking matchup problem. He's a 7-footer who shoots threes, and the Knicks are lacking in size. They've been starting Miles McBride as a third guard in the starting lineup because Anunoby's out. Sometimes they have to go to Precious Achua, and he's not really much in the offensive category, really. He's a defense and rebounds and maybe a layup if you're lucky kind of guy lately. So that's a bit troubling. Um, and the Celtics roster is just more talented. It's a question of if they're going to fight for it the way the Knicks are going to fight for it. And if this Knicks team was healthy, I think Knicks Celtics could be a 7-game matchup. It could be tilted in the Knicks' favor. But at this point, with the way the team is, with the way you have guys out, and even if Anunoby comes back, even if Hart is okay, there's still too many guys out for the playoffs. I'm thinking of Randall, obviously. Mitchell Robinson would really help to have him in the mix. Bogdanovich, they can win a championship without Bogdanovich. He wasn't someone that I was super worried about, but he can help in a pinch and hit shots off the bench. But I feel like Bogdanovich is what he's would have been able to contribute has been made up for by Alec Burks, who would never have played had all these guys gotten hurt. And Burks has really been a lift to the Knicks. So I don't think Bogdanovich's injury is really a problem, but you have plenty others. And yeah, if they had a healthy Randall, if they had Anunoby, and if they had a little of Mitchell Robinson, he's also an offensive liability too, but he's just so good defense and rebounding that you'd like to be able to lean on him to guard somebody else's bigs. So that's the situation with the Knicks right now. Everybody take a deep breath and get ready for Game 7. It's a treat. It is so incredibly nerve-wracking, though. Your season is on the line. Every single possession from tip-off to the end of the game matters so much. Your heart is going to be in your throat, and it's been a really long time since the Knicks were in a Game 7. It's been several eras ago. I mean, let's look at the last few seasons the Knicks have made the playoffs. Last year, They lost a very tough Game 6 in Miami to the Heat, not a Game 7. 2021, they only made it to 5 games against the Hawks. Then you have to go back to 2013. They lost in 6 games to the Indiana Pacers. They couldn't make it to a Game 7. 2012, they only made it 5 games against LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Miami Heat. 2011, they got swept in 4 against the Celtics. 2004, they got swept in 4 against the New Jersey Nets. 2001 went 5 games. Now that was a best-of-5 series against the Toronto Raptors. They had Game 5 at home and they lost. That was disheartening. It wasn't technically a Game 7. It has kind of a Game 7 feel. At that time, the first round only went best-of-5. So if the first round goes 5 games, that 5th game feels like it's something special. But to go 7 games in a best-of-7 is that much more special because the two teams, it means they're that much more evenly matched to take a longer series the distance. So even then, there was a feeling that a Game 5 isn't quite as special as a Game 7. So then you go back to 2000. The Knicks went to Miami and defeated the Miami Heat in Game 7 in 2000. In maybe the last game Patrick Ewing really did something positive for the Knicks and made his mark on his legacy as a New York Knick. He was able to make a move past Alonzo Mourning and dunk the basketball to give the Knicks a 1-point lead with about a minute and a half to go. And the Knicks defensively were so stout against the Heat that they were able to stop the Heat in a super long defensive possession in the final minute. That was nerve-wracking. It was terrifying. But at the end of the possession, the Knicks came away with the ball and a stop. And then that dunk by Ewing with over a minute and change to go ended up being the game-winning basket. And those matchups, Ewing against Alonzo Mourning, there was always a sense that Mourning was younger and faster and more athletic and hungrier, and Ewing was getting old, and his body was falling apart. How is Ewing going to contend with this? And somehow, a lot of the time, he would find some kind of way to get the better of his younger protege, and that was such a perfect example of it. I felt like the Knicks had no business winning that series and winning that 7th game in Miami, especially after they won Game 5 in Miami the year before, and they won Game 5 in Miami the year before that. To eliminate the Heat 3 years in a row, a team that is so evenly matched against you, was really a feather in the Knicks' cap, and that was the last real Game 7 memory that I have. I was a teenager at the time, but that was in Miami. When was the last Game 7 at the Garden? We have to go back further. 1999, there were no Game 7s, even though they had Game 5 in Miami. 1998, there was a Game 5 in Miami, no Game 7s. When I say Game 5, I mean in a best-of-5. 1997, there was a Game 7 in Miami that the Knicks lost, and they got blown out because they were shorthanded from the suspensions. And if you're a Knicks fan from a long time ago, you know what I'm talking about. You got to go back farther than that. 1995, the finger roll game, the Patrick Ewing finger roll game. That was the last Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. It's been a long time. And, of course, that was against Reggie Miller's Pacers. It's not like they'd really be avenging that loss if they win. But if they lose, it will certainly evoke that memory. And nobody wants to do that. That is one of the darkest moments in New York Knicks history. And it's something that you want to lock away into a drain and clog up and keep it sealed away. And of course, there's also the risk that something terrible could happen in this Game 7 that equals or rivals that. Any kind of loss, especially a loss in a close game. Whatever the play is that decides that game will decide the series. And if it goes against the Knicks, it's the types of stuff you don't want to think about. So, think about Jalen Brunson and how good he's been at home. Think about the extra effort that Josh Hart generally gives, especially when he's got the Garden crowd going. Think about Dante DiVincenzo raining threes when he's got things going. And when that Garden crowd has the Knicks at their most confident and they're playing their game, I don't think Indiana can beat them. But I do know that in games 1 and 2 of this series, Indiana played them very, very close at the Garden. If Indiana is able to play that way at the Garden in games 1 and 2, and is able to do that again in game 7, they have a puncher's chance. But I think we have to hope and pray that game 7 goes the way of games 4, 5, and 6, and the Knicks are just able to outclass the Pacers the way that they did in game 5 and the way the Pacers outclassed them in games 4 and 6. Um, I think in game 6, the Knicks showed me something for a quarter. It's better than game 4 where they were down 14-4 in the first couple of minutes of game 4. That's how dominant the Pacers were that game. I don't think the Pacers were as dominant in this game, but as the game went on, they certainly flexed their muscle with each quarter. Brunson at least showed that he could get back into his scoring rhythm in the third quarter. But by then it was too little, too late, and the Pacers were knocking down too many shots too easily. The Knicks have to lift their defensive intensity. They have to rebound more, and it feels like that's what they haven't been doing at Indiana. So as long as they can continue doing that at home, they should be all right. And we should have a Knicks-Boston Celtics series starting Wednesday for the Eastern Conference Finals. And it should be a fun time to be a Knicks and a Rangers fan to see the Rangers who are going to play. Hockey update. The Bruins lost today, which means the Rangers will play the Florida Panthers for the Eastern Conference Finals. So what I'm hoping and what I'm expecting the Knicks to come out like gangbusters on Game 7 on Sunday and play the way we know they can play and win that series. If they do, then it's Knicks Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's Rangers Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals for the NHL. If the Knicks somehow get to the finals, that would be miraculous. That would be wonderful, and I'd like their chances against whoever because the Celtics have the best record in the NBA. And of course, I like the Rangers' chances against Florida. They have the home ice. They are the big dogs left in the NHL. They have the President's Trophy. They are back on course after pulling out Game 6. So it can still really be a magical spring. The spring of 24 could still be just like the spring of 94. But as Knicks fans, we all got to hold our breath and wait and wonder what is going to happen Sunday afternoon when they tip off at 3:30, Game 7 at the Garden, the biggest event any Knicks fan has had in many years. Set your DVR, be ready at your TV set Sunday afternoon. Here we go. I'll talk to you after then. Peace out.